Hey everybody, it's Georgia Weedman, author of Penetration Testing, a Hands-On Introduction to Hacking, and your instructor for this accompanying lab. We're now going to move into post-exploitation, and we're going to revisit Meterpreter. We saw Meterpreter a bit during our exploitation phase. We used it as our payload a couple times with Metasploit. So Meterpreter is Metasploit's special payload. It's most powerful on Windows, but they have Meterpreter for Linux, PHP, a lot of different stuff. Even some mobile Meterpreters, in fact. And it really just gives you, some extra power to be able to do things. We looked at it in some of the exploitation ones. Like I said, we can run special commands. We can move around from process to process. We can load additional extensions on there, like incognito or mimikatz, things like that. So, there's really a lot you can do with Meterpreter, but let's just kind of do a little basic Meterpreter for this one, and then we'll kind of go from there. Alright, so usual suspects, IP adder. We're .2, our target is .3, and your IP address will be different than mine. So let's nmap this guy. .3. And it goes on and on and on. Alright, there we go. Alright, so it's Samba, it's not particularly useful what it says. It's somewhere between Samba 3 and Samba 4. Since this is post-exploitation, the lab manual goes into this as well, of course. I'm not going to, make you find the vulnerability for it, though, you're welcome to do so if you need more practice. We actually did find this particular vulnerability when we were doing vulnerability discovery. So I will just go ahead and tell you that it is that same Samba cry one we used earlier. So start up MSF console. Our goal is to use Meterpreter, so we need Metasploit for that. So in MSF console, remember, if you're not familiar with the Metasploit, I encourage you to go back and revisit the Metasploit section of exploitation, where we used it rather extensively. So we want to use our module, and it's going to be exploit Linux SMB, and then it's going to be something about known pipes. I don't remember it. Search is known. There we go. Exploit Linux is known pipe name. So the same one we used previously. And so we're going to use that guy. Show our options. Again, the only thing we have to set for this one is our host, so tell it where to go. That's going to be our target, which of course I lost my IP address, so luckily we can call things inside of Metasploit. Set our host, so set the option we want to set, and then what we want to set it to. If we show payloads on this one, you may recall it actually, since our goal is to use Meterpreter, this may seem kind of daunting because we only have command Unix interact as a payload. We don't have a Linux Meterpreter as an option for this one. It really just depends on the module. There are going to be, obviously you're going to get the payloads that are for the right platform. We're not going to see anything for Windows here on Linux, of course, but there are plenty more Linux ones besides just interact. There is a Meterpreter for Linux, so it really just depends on the exploit and how it works, what payloads are going to be available to you. So we can just let the payload default, and we should just be able to, well, I see my mistake. I need to set our host to .3 because I set it to my own machine. and we want the remote host. So let's go ahead and say exploit. And then we did get our command shell. So if I do a who am I, I'm root. Awesome. We talked about this when we saw this exploit earlier. SMB is great. It runs the system. It has a long history of vulnerabilities. So actually what I want to do here is do a control Z, and that will let me background the session. And another cool thing about Metasploit, we haven't seen this yet, is that you can actually background sessions. They will stay open in the background, as the name implies, and you can come back to them. So yes, I would like to background the session. And so that takes us back to the MSF console prompt. But if we do a sessions, and just with no parameters, it'll show us our active sessions. So we currently have one session open at session ID number 1. If we want to go back into our session, we can do sessions-I for interact and tell it which session we want. And we will be back in our session. So Control Z, yes, I want to background it again. So something we can do, even though the payload wasn't originally available to us, we can do something called upgrading the session, which will try to turn the session from, whatever it is into Meterpreter. So if we do sessions-U for upgrade and tell it we want to upgrade session 1, it actually creates a new session. So it's not actually taking like the open session and turning it into Meterpreter. It's starting a new session. So it did open up Meterpreter session 2. So now if we do a sessions-I for interact with number 2, that pops us into Linux Meterpreter. So from there, help is always nice. That'll give us, our commands that we have. Really just from the Windows side, this is Linux anyway, but one of the things I like about Meterpreter, it's real simple, but that it lets me use Linux commands on Windows, which, I'm not a big DOS fan. PowerShell's better, but, you never know. But we can do like an ls. Looks like there's something called flag that may be interesting to you. So we can also do things like git and put, which, git isn't a Linux command, so git put. So let's see, git flag unknown command kit, because it's actually called download, because when git and put are like HTTP and FTP and stuff. It's download flag, so I can download the flag. I can also upload files. Like I could upload a file from this computer onto wherever. Since I'm root, I can do pretty much whatever. I can get like sys.info. So yeah, I can do like I can also I could, if I wanted to, I could drop back into a shell, and like if I did cat etc shadow, there's not too terribly much in it, because it's a Kali system that we use in the cloud. But yeah, that's just some basic Meterpreter. I encourage you to like look at the help information and get familiar with it. We'll do a couple more exercises with it, but it's definitely pretty awesome thing to have around, really powerful. So yeah, the main thing here is we used Meterpreter. We saw sessions. We had not seen sessions before, so you can background your sessions, keep them around for later. You can upgrade your sessions as well, so if you don't get Meterpreter straight off, you may be able to upgrade to it later. So, just a little bit of side note on Meterpreter for this one. See you guys next time.